One thing I notice when I have my ICOM 705 in terminal mode connected to Reflector Hill 197B and then my handheld also connected to the same one. When I transmit on my handheld, I don't hear myself on the 705 or vice versa. However, if I use an app like Doozy, then my audio will go through. Let me, if I can illustrate that. VA6ALY monitoring. See, it came through. And let me show you Doozy now. Okay. There you go. It gives me the transmissions. It uses DCS for reflector. Tells me I'm connected and what reflector it's on. And of course I selected the XLX 197B. Now some interesting information. Okay, I want to show, is it possible to use the ICOM 705 and connect to a reflector? Well, I did a transmission, and let me show you on my book. There you go. I connected. And it seems to ignore whatever is set in my ICOM 705. Let me show you that. VA6ALY. Looking at my screen for the site XLX 197B, I don't show up there. My ICOM 52 plus does, because I am linked directly to it. Okay, here's the screen. 1232 now, and saying 1219. That was with my ICOM ID 52. 1228 on that one. Just got updated. 1230. It updates every minute. Okay. It's interesting. It seems to ignore whatever the setting is on the ICOM 705 when I use Doozy, and I'm using the USB. The only thing I had to do was switch from Wi-Fi to USB. And I enabled it in terminal mode. I just used whatever I had last time. Okay, I have some more information I still want to share. What can be done in terminal mode? To understand some of the terminology, REF, reflector, XRF, and DCS, and XLX. These are different protocols. The first reflector was referred to as REF, and it had its own particular network protocol. I think it was called D+. And then the second type of reflectors that came out was the XRF reflector. That's X-ray radio Fox. And it used its own network protocol, and it was called D Extra. Then DCS, Delta Charlie Sierra reflector, arrived. and my understanding it originated in Germany. It was dropped and someone else picked it up, and it uses a protocol called DCS. Now XLX came out. That's the X-ray Lima X-ray. This particular reflector speaks all three previous protocols: REF, XRF, and DCS. And plus it has its own protocol. So total of 4. This allows connections to DMR and fusion repeaters. From what I understand, it is a little bit confusing. It appears what happened is some reflector systems, when they decide to set their own, they just start using the XRF and DCS numbering, if you want to call it. So that kind of created a conflict. You don't know if you're actually connecting, like for example, to XLX 208C. It could be not the repeater that you're thinking. So I'm not sure exactly how bad this confusion is. It seems like from the little bit of experimenting I was carrying on, you had issues with some and not issues with others. So I'm thinking there's some sort of a protocol that's being used that I'm not expecting, or something of that sort. It's a little bit too early for me to decide what the issue is. However, I think the main thing that most people want to know is, can they connect to these reflectors using terminal mode? At this time, it does not seem it's possible. Again, I haven't tested enough to try, which eventually will, but from what I hear, apparently terminal mode is call sign forwarding or something of that sort. So it's using a different protocol, which is probably why it can't be done. Now, updates do occur, so I have to find out if there's anything new coming out. I know ICOM kind of came out with what they call repeater monitor sample, which allows you to listen to a lot of these repeaters, not able to talk to. That's another area. I kind of pointed out that option in repeater moni. If you hit, yeah, it was off. I'll put it on. Oh, it won't let me put it on. Okay, because of doozy. I will look into it a little bit more. What's nice about it, if you just want to listen to a whole bunch of repeaters and you want to use the scan function, you probably could modify the file. It's basically a text file with a list of IP domain names, connection lists, and the ones that you can monitor, you would keep, and the ones you can't monitor, just delete. So you're only monitoring stations scanning that you're able to. Again, I have not played with it. This is kind of what I understand, and I believe this feature became available with the 1.43. I think that's what it's called, the latest one as of today. And there's a help file explaining how to use it. So if you're something interested, you can download that from ICOM Japan, the update, and it will include the manual that you want to look at. Okay, let's try. In order to change, you've got to do a disconnect. Oops, I'm thinking it's my iPad again. I gotta use my mouse. There we go. Now I could. I use the iPad too much. Okay, let's try XRF. I'm going to go online and see if I can pick one out. I'm going to try, oops, iPad symptom. XRF, I think it's 3.5. Let's see. XRF 035, is that the one I want? Yep, okay. Let's see if it works. Linked to XRF 035C. Yeah, most of them are C. Let me make a transmission. VA6ALY, Calgary, Alberta. Now let's wait for a refresh and see if I appear. I'll stop. Okay, that didn't take long. Yep, I appeared as VA6ALY, suffix 705, and using the letter D for my terminal access point letter. Okay, so it looks like with the ICOM 705, and this would apply with the 52, I'm going to disconnect. DCS XRF REF XLX. Unfortunately, if someone decided to use an XRF or REF instead of using the XLX, you have to use their lettering to get in. And because of that, it doesn't appear terminal mode will be able to work. Fortunately, all the contacts you probably really want would have the XLX. So I don't see a need for a hotspot. And why buy a hotspot when software like this is free? It would be nice if this was available on a Mac. I mean, they can bypass the Apple Store or whatever, just create it, make it, and just make it available for the MacBooks. We can live without the iPhones or iPad. Because most of the time, you're going to be on a home base. You're not going to be mobile with this. With distracting laws in effect so much, probably would not be a good idea to be running these apps on your computer while mobile. So I'm only just beginning to look into it because I've been asked a few questions, and so I decided, okay, let me look into it. I personally didn't have a need to do none of this, even though I had this app. But anyways, I decided to try it again, but with the different protocols using the 705. So, not much more I can add right now. Once I finish researching a little bit, if I have more new information, if there's only a little bit of information, I'll post it as a comment. But if it's something of substantial differences, I'll just post a video. Okay, I came across a couple of REF reflectors, and so I've added to my memory for the ID52 and the 705. If you look at the bottom right there, it's the same style. The name of the repeater that I had to use in order to connect, I save as a memory, so I don't have to go into DR mode or anything like that. I just dial in the memory and hit transmit. It will transmit on the right frequencies, offset, because it's all pre-programmed. And then the command which would be REF 016. C is the radio that I want to go through, and L, the command is to link. And of course, I'm using the RPT repeater, B and G for gateway. So it works. I've tested it. You can do this with any of the reflectors, save as a memory. It's so much easier than fooling around with DR mode and then entering it and so forth. And also, I put in the echo and info and unlink so I can unlink it when I'm done. So there's an idea there for you. And I did also test the setup using DR mode, where basically I selected the from repeater, which in this case would be VE6RPT, and then the 2. I put in the reflector call sign, REF016. CL, however, I found it was probably more reliable. I can't remember. It seemed like I went through, but I decided to try and use the optional commands that you have. Instead of going to direct input, I went to reflector, entered the reflector through the window of dialing. Actually, maybe I'll show to you what I did. Okay, I'll go to DR mode, the little button, hold it there. Again, I've entered some of these repeaters in the repeater list and kept in the same group. Or you can do a search by nearby. Now, let me go in there. Reflector. Link to. Direct input. And then you enter that information. Hit set. And then you can go reflector, use the reflector, and that puts you in a CQ mode, but connected to that particular reflector. I just find it easier to do in memory. It might be okay when you just want to try a site before you even can think you may want to use it later on. So that's basically it for that, and it works. It's quite easy to do it. Interesting. I hit the clock, did I? Yep. Okay, let me show you how it looks in memory. I'm going to select a group, and I believe it's in, was it DV reflectors, I think? Let me double check. Yep, okay. So this is the on link, and these are all the XLX reflectors I got programmed. And probably about 20 altogether. The ones I'm more likely will use. And there is the REF reflector 016, the A radio. So and it's telling me is link. And then I have the B radio and the C radio. The C radio is for general, and I believe the A and B is for the networks, Ottawa and some other site there. So I think it's used for linking throughout Canada for the net, things of that sort. So keep that in mind when you read it. You don't want to enter something where and then use it as a rag chewing site or even as a test. So, you know, there's no guesswork. You only have to remember your group layouts, and that's it. Okay, let's summarize a little bit. As mentioned on a previous point, the access point letter, you don't never put in your call sign on any of your equipment. You put it wherever it requests, like terminal mode access point, or if you're using an app like the ICOM RSMS3, that's where you put your access point letter. If you don't do that, you mix it up, you probably will not be able to hear. That seems to be the main problem. People are hearing you, but you're not hearing them. Now, I kind of showed the different ways to access reflectors. I explained that there were basically, what, 4 types? REF reflectors, XRF reflectors, DCS reflectors, and the latest one, XLX reflectors. The XLX supports all those other protocols. However, I guess certain individuals or sysops, those people who set up a terminal, decided to grab the legacy numbers from XRF and REF, which of course create a bit of confusion and difficulty connecting. You're thinking it's XLX, we'll say 202, but it's not the link that you wanted because the person is using REF 202. So you have to use the REF 202 in order to connect to that repeater. The terminal mode, it can connect to other repeaters other than XLX or reflectors. The problem, I think, is the app that you use. For example, the ICOM RSMS3 only supports call sign routing. There's no reason for ICOM not to add support like DCS has. So I am in terminal mode. The only difference is I'm using DCS, and it allows me, as I demoed here on this particular video, connect to any of those other repeaters. There was no limitation, hesitation, whatever. It just worked beautiful. And you didn't have to play with the ICOM IC705 other than tell it to use USB connection, because DCS is strictly a USB in Windows, so that would be true with the ICOM 52. I would have to switch from Bluetooth to USB. You know, if the only thing that stops ICOM from adding that same feature, if they feel that Bluetooth wouldn't be fast enough or not adequate, use USB. At least you can use terminal mode. Save yourself a lot of money not having to fool around with hotspots and all their configurations. So I think that basically wraps it up. Just think of the REF reflectors, the XRF reflectors, and even the DCS reflectors, though it seems like it's a good protocol to use for programs like DCS. They're legacy reflectors. XLX talks all the languages. And using this to numbers, you're talking about 1,000 sites. And if you use a letter and numbers like A00, another 100. You use AA0, that's another 100. And you use AAA, another 100. So you can do that with 26 alphabets. And who knows, maybe some other lettering could be used. Some of the, you know, $, £, @ as long as it doesn't conflict with another system using it. I imagine it'd be a long time before we start running out of XLL addresses, I guess. I hope this kind of gave you an idea. I have not really played with these other reflectors. I've never had a need. But I guess in my research, I did come across a couple of repeaters that might be of interest. I try to avoid using repeater as much as possible because you feel like you're tying up a repeater for other people. So if I need to work those sites, I just fire up the windows and use Doozy, and this way I connect direct and not bother anyone when I'm connecting to the site. Hopefully, software will become available for the Mac, so I don't have to boot up Windows. If you come across any, I know there was another one called Blue DV for the Mac, but I believe it only supports Fusion and DMR. I haven't really looked into it carefully yet. If you have, let me know. And I'm assuming it's probably a USB connection too, which is fine. As I mentioned before, it's highly unlikely you'll be using any of this stuff while driving. The very fact that there's a distraction law in effect, no, you don't want to be doing it. So, which is probably one reason why I wasn't too concerned about getting a D-Star radio for the mobile. Instead, I got the 2730B, the black edition. But we'll see. Right now, it's going to serve as a crossband and probably mobile when I'm not using it as a crossband. Again, it would be appreciated. Thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, at least subscribe. Because by so doing, it encouraged me to take the time to do the research so I can present and maybe resolve some of the questions that different people have asked me. I started this a long time ago when it first came out, but it was so of little benefit to me at the time. I had the equipment but hardly ever used it, and then I just let time fly by, and it's only in recent months I decided to look into it, seeing that some new stuff out there. It's a little bit more practical and useful now, there's no question about it. Please subscribe. Have a nice day. Until next time.